For our final collab block, we're going to be exploring employer collaboratives in action, insights from Colorado. We're going to be joined by Levine of FutureFit, Suzy Broz of Colorado Thrives, and Alison Griffin of FutureRise, who also serves as moderator. Let's give them a round of applause. This final conversation explores what becomes possible when employers move from competition to collaboration and begin building shared systems of talent and opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Great to be here all the way from Colorado. Thanks for having us. I'm Alison Griffin. In addition to my role with FutureRise, which is an operating foundation in Colorado, working to support learners who are pursuing short-term credentials, I also serve as a contributor with Forbes magazine and have been writing about a lot of these issues over the last 7 years. So it's really great to be with all of you. And we're going to jump in. I actually love where Mark left off in this last session, the call for employers and platforms and the interesting things that we might be able to do together. And we're actually going to hone in on that with respect to what's happening in Colorado. So I am joined by two colleagues, Levine, the Chief Commercial Officer with FutureFitAI, and Suzy Broz, the Director of Talent Pathways and Operations with Colorado Thrives. Colorado Thrives is a CEO-led coalition that is working toward putting 30,000 Coloradans into good jobs by 2030. And they've built this shared infrastructure with FutureFitAI called Career Fit Colorado in order to make that goal measurable. So we're going to get into a little bit of the detail about how they have made that work, both in bringing the employers together, but also empowering a technology platform that's bringing Coloradans to good jobs. So Suzy, I'm actually going to start with you. Colorado Thrives, as I mentioned, CEO-led coalition, shared infrastructure that has employers coming together around the state to support talent development. Talk to me a little bit more about what seeded that coalition and what has been so powerful about those CEOs across the state doing something together that they could not figure out how to do themselves.
Yeah, building off of the last panel here, I would say that the three things that really have become possible for us in a CEO-led coalition are that really, first and foremost, our CEOs are the ones who came up with our big goal. If it was just a workforce development organization coming up with this big goal, they'd have to get that employer input, right? But with our CEOs coming to the table, designing this vision, what that creates is really a shared commitment and follow through and pure accountability. And frankly, sometimes a little bit of healthy competition there that really helps drive momentum. I would also say, and this is, also building off the last panel, what's possible is innovation. So we have a coalition of CEOs across different industries. And so what we're able to do is things that would be really hard to do on their own. Whenever we talk to talent leaders and talk about a new talent initiative, some of the initiatives that are coming up at this panel, at this conference, for example, a lot of our talent leaders will say, well, who else is doing it, right? They don't want to do it on their own because it feels risky. But if you have a group of talent leaders together, they're just more willing to test and learn and kind of try things out together. And then I would say, thirdly, when you have a group of CEOs leading on a big vision, incremental change is not going to cut it, right? And so our CEOs really push us to think about what's the big scale and big impact that we can push for. And so really what's possible with the CEO-led coalition is that we've got a group of CEOs that are civic leaders driving major transformational change.
Suzy, before we turn to Lucas, can you give us a sense of who are the companies involved in Colorado Thrives? I know we have some household names, and we also have some names of organizations that folks in this room may not recognize. Give us a sense of who makes up Thrives.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because we cut across many different industries. We're leading companies in Colorado, leading Fortune 500 companies, but we're across industries. So we've got healthcare companies, we've got DaVita, we've got small specialty hospitals, Craig Hospital. We've also got some construction firms that are kind of rolled up in some of the private equity firms that sit on our board. Tech, Ibotta, manufacturing, Trimble, really, that's one of the unique challenges for us is how do we align on a shared vision when we all are facing different talent contexts. Some are facing our construction companies, healthcare, are sometimes operating in a talent scarcity context, whereas companies like Ibotta that work in the tech space are not operating in a talent scarcity context and are in fact getting inundated with applications. But everybody is aligned around this shared vision. So our companies contribute in different ways, but they're all committed to that shared goal of supporting and upskilling 30,000 Coloradans.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Lucas, tech always gets sold as a silver bullet. You have said, though, that you can't scale what isn't already working. So tell us a little bit about what does FutureFitAI do? And then actually, what is the technology doing to accelerate the coalition's work that Suzy has just outlined?
Yeah, so I'll restate what you said, which is that technology cannot scale what isn't already working. It also can't scale what doesn't already exist in terms of relationships and partnerships. I think we have been, as a technology provider, often in the position of having organizations, coalitions come to us with the expectation that it is going to be a silver bullet. And that is apparent pretty quickly. I think there is a spectrum of ecosystem readiness to even consider bringing in something like technology to scale up what you've built. I think there's an interesting spot on that spectrum that I think is optimal for getting started. I think with ColoradosRise, this is an organization that has an unbelievable foundation in place of trust, of relationships, the ability to convene across a large number of employers, especially in high demand industries across the state. But you also don't need to wait until you have everything figured out before you get started, right? We've heard a lot of talk already about experimentation. We've also found that with technology, once you have something up, it actually can be a rallying force to bring people around the table, especially when something is public facing. Then they want to figure out how they can get a piece of that or how they can get represented in that. But in terms of the things that need to be in place, the foundational stuff is mostly what we heard about on the last panel. The folks in West Michigan, which is trust. It is shared problem definition, a shared mission statement, and North Star. We think it's also quite important to have a backbone organization in place that can really be owning system outcomes. I think the language varies. Sometimes we talk about the quarterback for the workforce ecosystem, but who is it who wakes up every single day and thinks about how can we get more people into high quality pathways and employers the talent that they need? And so that's the foundational stuff. I also love what I heard earlier around mapping the ecosystem and understanding what already exists. So if we can plug in, we don't need to build a new system from scratch, better leveraging the resources that already exist. And then there's super tactical stuff like, are people actually ready and willing to share data? And can we get the right MOUs in place, data sharing agreements? And to start, that might just be demand data. And over time, ideally, that's more like outcomes data. Understand who was hired into which positions, but also understand, were they retained? How are they performing? Were they promoted? That data is invaluable for the ecosystem that's also trying to train people and prepare people. So there's some spot along that spectrum. You don't need all the MOUs in place before you get started, but you certainly need a level of commitment and a durable commitment, especially from your employer partners, because a technology implementation is something that doesn't happen overnight. That is a journey.
For sure. So I'd like both of you to walk through what Career Fit Colorado actually does. Suzy, I'm going to turn to you first. What were member companies doing before you all built Career Fit Colorado with FutureFitAI? And how did that platform really accelerate what you've seen in the last actually number of months across your employer partners?
Yeah. So really what Career Fit Colorado does for us is it enables our employers to connect more easily to local talent pipelines. And then as Lucas was talking about, it really helps enable that data feedback loop that helps us understand what's working and frankly, what's not. And so before Career Fit, when we talked to our employers and our talent leaders, what we heard was that there was no really easy, streamlined way to find local candidates. it varied really by industry. For some of our construction companies, we heard that they were getting invited to sometimes as many as like dozens of career fairs in a single month. And then meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, we were hearing from companies that they were getting 6,000 applications for a single internship. So, very different scenarios there. But the through line, especially for our coalition committed to hiring locally, was that there was no easy way to see and kind of access those candidates in a way that connected to their existing systems. Employers invest a ton of money in their own applicant tracking system. So we needed a system that was going to work with their existing systems that they'd invested so much time and energy into. So that was the challenge. And then what we, really attempted to kind of problem solve with FutureFitAI is how can we make this easier? And so what CareerFit Colorado enables is really two things for employers. It enables, it creates a kind of a tracking code. So now that when applicants apply through CareerFit Colorado, they are tagged, or you can filter for them as locally sourced candidates. And then, as Lucas was alluding to too, this outcome piece, now that we've got this tag, we can actually, and we're starting to get back from the employers data that shows, who are those candidates, which programs did they come from locally, and then how did they do? And that invites such interesting conversations with our education partners who are trying to figure out how to train their talent and develop with all of the kind of changes that are coming down the pike. And also with our employers who are saying that they're committed to hiring locally. This is actually showing us, how they're faring in that way as well. So it really enables us to kind of see what's working, see what's not, and then drive conversations that can produce a stronger talent pipeline.
Of course, your mention of the partnerships you have with your education partners takes me in one direction. So, Lucas, I'm curious how your technology has been integrating with education providers, workforce training providers, but also thinking about it from the systems transformation side and the public workforce system. And how are you tapping talent that might be coming in through that funnel and bringing them to employers such as the ones represented by Thrive?
Yeah, I think one quick, just contextualizing the kind of the problems to be solved by this technology. We started with a focus on this idea that everyone should have a GPS for their career, which is how can I understand based on my experience and my skills and my barriers mapped up against my local economy, what are the pathways that make the most sense for me? And very quickly in that journey, we realized that workforce development takes a village. There's so many different stakeholders that are involved in helping a person successfully navigate a career transition, whether that is their first job or it is a displaced worker or it's someone who's looking to upskill and move into a new career, either in the same sector or in a different sector. And so to the question around systems transformation, it's interesting in a room like this, where there are a lot of employers represented. I imagine that there are people who could spend an entire lifetime in kind of the HR talent space, depending on which sector you're in, and never come into contact with the public workforce system, or not even really know what the public workforce system is. And so we're maybe just naming, and I'm going to speak first about the public workforce system, but this also, I think, is to a degree extends and is inclusive of higher education.
Yes.
There are tens of billions of dollars being spent every single year to prepare people for good jobs and to make sure that employers have the talent that they need. Tens of billions of dollars, whether it's WIOA or it's apprenticeships or it's incumbent worker training, these systems and these programs exist. Unfortunately, the system hasn't always produced what the employers and the individuals need. And so that's why we see the emergence, increasingly so, of these coalitions and oftentimes employer-led organizations who are, to the language from the previous panel, taking their talent challenges into their own hands. The problem is that they're leaving a lot of resources and opportunity on the table, and it's also creating, I think, confusion for different stakeholders, whether that's the individual job seeker or that's the employer who doesn't know which system to plug into. And so where I think it's quite important for these coalitions to do their best, Colorado thrives. I think we're still early on figuring out how to tap into and leverage public resources, but that conversation has been happening from day one. And how can we think about accessing data, for example, that the state government in Colorado has that could help us better understand outcomes and understand people's pathways over time. There's also just the dollars that are available. There's also just the supply in terms of training, the public workforce system, the community college system. You're never going to be able to match that with employer-led training initiatives that scale and durability over time. So the ecosystems that we've seen be the most successful sustainably over time find a way to coordinate with the public systems.
Got it. That's really helpful. And I want to take us almost to our ask and our get, or our ask and our give. So Suzy, not next quarter, but maybe Monday, an employer in this room who's doing business in Colorado wants to plug in to what you're doing at Colorado Thrives. How do they do that? So what's the first thing they should do? And then Lucas, my question for you is, what's the piece of information that they should be ready to share with a platform like FutureFitAI? Suzy, I'll start with you.
Well, that one's easy for me. If you are hiring in Colorado and looking for early career talent, connect with me. We'd love to find a way to get you plugged into this pilot with us, and we'd love to grow and learn from you. So if you're hiring, we're here for you.
Mine's also easy. I think ultimately all of this depends on a quality demand signal. And so the most important data you could provide is, what is your hiring forecast for the next, call it 12 to 24 months? What jobs are you hiring for, and which volumes, on what timelines? What are the top 3 to 5 skills and credentials that you're going to be looking for? Those might not be perfect. Those might change, but being able to at least directionally indicate and share scenarios and update over time is what's most important.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzy, for your leadership. Lucas, for your leadership. Great to be working with both of you in Colorado. Thanks.
Thank you.